In the last video, we talked about how a habit can happen when three things come together: motivation, the ability to do the habit, and something to prompt you to do the habit. We also talked about most successful habits can only happen when we start tiny and then start to build momentum so that that habit happens often and grows. This momentum is so important because as human beings, we want immediate results. And so we think we need to take huge steps to make that happen. However, it's tiny, easy steps that really lead to big results because consistency increases momentum. Now we need to talk about what creates that consistency. It's celebration. This is because, contrary to popular belief, people change best when they feel good, not when they feel bad. And that's why it's so tough to pull ourselves out of a depressed state. Sure, it can be done, but not without a lot of effort. And the beauty of tiny habits is that they seem almost effortless, which is what makes them so effective. So what is celebrating? Well, a solid celebration is something that you do immediately after or even while performing your habit. It can be as elaborate as a cheer or as subdued as an inward thought of "great job." It is different than a reward because it needs to be instantaneous. It doesn't come natural to us to celebrate ourselves, but I promise you, with practice, it gets easier. And most importantly, it is the most critical part of habit building. Now that we're done with our review, let's talk about 3 habits that will provide lasting change. This first one is a 2-part habit, an attitude of gratitude. So the first part should be done as soon as you wake up. Notice the underlined portions of the habit below. The first section is the prompt. So in this case, it's sitting up in bed. You could also do it when you stand up from bed or when you make your way to the bathroom in the morning. The point is to construct your habit with an action, otherwise known as a prompt, that you're going to do right before your habit. Now you're going to say something positive. The intent of this is not to be fake. So if you aren't feeling up to saying it's going to be a great day, try something else, like "I'm going to bring my best to this morning." And then you will see that I've underlined the celebration. Now you don't need to smile. You could do something else, but the point is to do something that reinforces the habit that feels good. Another great one to try is to high-five yourself while looking in the mirror. Now this may seem pretty out there, but if you like Mel Robbins, she swears by this as a daily practice. In the second part of this 2-part habit, we're also doing an attitude of gratitude, but this time we're doing it right before we go to sleep. Can't think of too many better ways to end the day than to think about what you're grateful for and then something to look forward to the next day. So in this particular habit, you're going to find your prompt. In this case, we've got "after my head hits the pillow." Now be careful with this one. You don't want to say "before I fall asleep," because I guarantee you, you're going to fall asleep before you do the habit. Trust me, I've been there. But after your head hits the pillow or after you put on your pajamas, some kind of prompt that you do right before the habit is what makes this important. You're going to think of 2 things that happened in the day that you're grateful for. You could do 1, you could do 2, the number doesn't matter, but keep it easy, keep it tiny. And then 1 thing that you're looking forward to tomorrow. This doesn't need to be a huge event taking place. It could be something as simple as "I'm looking forward to that first cup of coffee in the morning." The point is to get your brain rewired to look for the positive. It is scientifically proven that when you do this, your brain is going to start to look for signs to reinforce that this thought is true. And then we've got our celebration. I'll sigh with contentment, or I'll smile, or I will do a fist bump. Whatever it is that you need to do, the point is to make sure that you celebrate. It's a really great way to end the day. We just focused on a 2-part habit for our mind. Now let's focus on one for our body. I like to call this "an object in motion stays in motion." You may have heard this when you were in your high school science class, but it's true. So if we look at an exercise routine, the hardest part is really that first movement, whether that's getting out the door to go for your walk or getting to that exercise class. That's really the hardest part. Once you get into it, you are that object that is in motion. So you're going to continue going. So it's the thought really that keeps us from doing anything. Oh, I'll go later. Oh, I don't feel like it. This happened. This is in my way. It all starts with a thought. So we have to try to overcome that thought, but we have to make it really easy on ourselves. So to remedy this, you're going to choose some small movement. All right, make it small, make it easy, and you're going to do it for 30 seconds or less. We talked a little bit about this example in the last video, and it was around going out, and exercising for an hour, feeling like you got hit by a bus, and how that keeps us from continuing. It slows that momentum down. So even though this seems like such a small thing, and how am I ever going to get fit this way? Trust me, that momentum is going to build, and you can do anything for 30 seconds or less. And then what's going to happen is you're going to keep going. It's going to feel easy. As it feels easier, you're going to do a little bit more and a little bit more to keep this up each day, so that by the end of a certain amount of time, you're back to doing that 30 minutes or that hour of consistent physical activity.
Here we have some examples for how to get moving. Notice that the prompt and the celebration are both underlined. For exercise, it's going to be really important for consistency's sake that your prompt is something that's very convenient to do right before you want to do your habit. So for instance, you don't want to do something that you then have to go all the way across the house in order to perform your movement, because the chances of you being prompted to do it or remembering to do it or even feeling like it's convenient to do it are not going to be very high. So in the first example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will do 2 stretches for 10 seconds each, and I'll give myself 2 thumbs up. That's an example of a strong prompt and good celebration, because you're in the kitchen, you've got your coffee, it's a convenient place to do your stretches. But let's say that you don't want to stretch. You want to do something that's more around strength training. Okay, well, after I take my morning vitamins, I will do 3 lunges on each leg and give myself a high five. Another thing that's good about this one is that if you're in your kitchen, you can usually use your countertop for support in doing those lunges. So if you're just getting started with lunges, it's a convenient place to do those. Or maybe you want something more cardiovascular. So after I finish my morning coffee, I will walk in place for 30 seconds and I will do a happy dance. So maybe your happy dance is some additional movement in there. But again, notice that each of these takes 30 seconds or less to do. That doesn't mean that it's always going to be 30 seconds, but that is your baseline. So that's what you start with, and you start to work up from there.
We've now created habits for our mind, a habit for our body, and now we're going to talk about a habit for productivity. I like to call this one the one thing. Incidentally, this title actually also happens to be a podcast title, which is what got me into Tiny Habits in the first place. I was listening to the podcast, The One Thing, and Dr. BJ Fogg was a guest on the show talking about his book, Tiny Habits. And I did some research right after that podcast, and that's where I found the Tiny Habits Academy. This one is a great habit because it's all about identifying the one thing that's going to be most meaningful, provide the best results, or both. And it is really one of the best habits that you can do. So I want you to try just the first part of this, and once you get good at that, then you can step up to scheduling time and actually working on the one thing. And you're going to be amazed at the results that I'll provide. So in this first example, after I sit down at my desk in the morning, that's the prompt, I will write my one thing on a Post-it note, or if you're an electronics girl, you could do it on the computer. Just make sure that it's a place where you can see it, so it's visible. And I will say, great job. There's our celebration. So you're going to do that, and once you get the habit of doing that, then the bonus habit is after I write my one thing on a Post-it note, so see how this builds on one another, and I put it in a place where it's visible, I will schedule time to work on the one thing, and I'll give myself a pat on the back for prioritizing what is important, or whatever celebration it is that you want to do. And this one is going to allow you to get the most meaningful, important stuff done in your personal life, in your work day. It really is a strong habit. So to recap, we have covered 3 habits that done consistently will really produce lasting change. The first was the 2-part attitude of gratitude that sets us up for a great day first thing in the morning and keeps us grateful and looking forward to the next day in the evening. The second, an object in motion stays in motion, is all about incorporating physical movement in our day. And then the third, the one thing, helps us to prioritize that one action that is going to move us forward in our personal and professional lives. I've created a PDF that you can use and download on my site at the address that you see on the screen. And you can use this. It's got all of the habits that we discussed today. I hope that these bring you a lot of greatness in your life, and I will talk to you next week.